Welcome to the first reply video for this channel. So in this video I'm going to reply to the comments made on my last video, which was the rage analysis, looking at the different psychological factors behind why we rage. So a couple quick notes. For one, I tried to make this video shorter than the actual analysis. That being said, if you want more of this, I can go more in depth with my replies in the future. Also, I have a Google Doc where I list ideas that I didn't really bring up, so feel free to check that out, link in the description. And then lastly, at the end of this video, I am kind of outlining some of my future plans for this channel, going over the next couple of videos I have in mind and just like general ideas and themes for what I want to do. So I hope you like it. Element High comments, I think it mostly boils down to people not realizing that their performances don't reflect their value as a person or competitor. Win or lose, you're not worth more or less from it. So I kind of agree with this comment in a lot of ways, where like very frequently players do tend to not necessarily overrate their skill but overvalue it. But I also think there are other questions worth asking too, like, why do people put so much value in their numbered ranking? And I think one of the reasons is like, we're a video game community, and very frequently people who play video games a ton don't have a lot else going on in their lives. And like, this is very true for me. When I started going to tournaments, I was like depressed. I, wasn't really doing anything, so I put all my time into Smash, and then, that eventually led to like results and me just having the time to go to tournaments. So I think like part of the reason people put so much value in a rank is not simply because they're dumb or something. It's also because like Smash is the thing. It's like the first thing that they really accomplish for themselves, or like it's the only thing that they really feel proud of. And I think that's just something as a community we have to learn to deal with, being a video game community. Swazi asks, how do you think people as individuals can fix these problems in their self-esteem and the way that they take negative results? After watching this video, I can definitely recognize myself as a player that suffers from having a defensive self-esteem that gets in the way of getting better. But even though I'm able to understand that I suffer from this as a player, I'm still struggling to understand how to fix this problem, and I'm not exactly sure what I need to do to fix my defensive self-esteem. Is there any good way to explain how defensive self-esteem can be corrected, and if so, are there any good examples of fixing this problem relating to Smash that could help explain the process of fixing defensive self-esteem? So I think one of the first things with this question is like, don't treat defensive self-esteem as like this huge thing that you need to get over all at once. There's a lot of like bits and pieces to it that over time you'll be more secure than defensive. So kind of with that, one of the important things is like, when you recognize your insecurities and you recognize the things that like you're unsure about, that you don't like believe in yourself in, deep down or whatever, ask yourself if you think they're changeable or not. If you don't think that you can change something, then that's probably going to lead you to like, hide that doubt more, because it'd be crippling to your self-esteem. So some of the other things I've read on this topic, using if-then strategies really helps with defensiveness, because when you have these doubts, instead of like pushing them to your unconscious, you can make a strategy. So if I have to deal with this move, I will do this. Then I've also read that self-affirmations are helpful if you do them before you face the like critical event. So the paper didn't bring up what self-affirmations meant specifically, but if you think you can use this to work for you, go for it. But I think the big things to ask yourselves are like, when you are raging over something, do you believe that thing you're struggling with is changeable? Also, whenever you recognize something that you struggle with or something you're worried about, planning ahead for it is really helpful. And then some sort of like positive self-affirmations probably related to the doubts. So let's say like you don't think you can win a certain matchup, just telling yourself you can and that you'll do your best might help. So these next two questions I'm grouping together because they were pretty similar. Dylan O asks, my question is, have you seen the Youngstown, Ohio player tier list, and how do you feel about it? I'm not from that region, but I felt there was almost too much detail. Ranking players in tiers is a concept I agree with, but putting players in F tier doesn't sound helpful, and in my eyes at least, reinforces that hierarchical structure that Smash scenes tend to have. If you haven't seen it, the tier list is on Inkle Knuckles' Twitter. PK Mudkip comments, so the question I have is how does a player tier list reduce salt compared to a PR? I could see that for some people seeing themselves being on the rankings would eliminate possible salt, but what about those who believe they should be in a higher tier? They're the ones who don't get put onto the list due to not attending a lot of tournaments. I feel like having a tier list has a chance of getting more people salty due to the pressure of a rank being applied to not just 15-ish players, but instead the entire region. So one quick thing I want to clarify to kind of both of these points is that when I'm suggesting a tier list PR, I'm still only suggesting it for like 10 to 15 people. I do agree with their points that ranking everyone would create a lot of like psychological problems that we don't need, and it would not be worth it. So kind of with that, like along that idea, I think a ranking would probably only go down to C tier. I know that's what Northeast Ohio did, and it's like, for Pittsburgh, if we did one for this last season, there'd be one person in S tier, the next group would be like 4 people in A, and then the next group would be like 4 in B, and then there'd be 4 in C. So I think that's like pretty reasonable of how a tier list might be organized. Obviously, it doesn't have to be those specific numbers, it's about who earns it, but overall, that's kind of how I would envision this to work out. Eric Trumer asks, what do you think about rage as a way to discharge frustration after an intense or frustrating set? For example, if you play a character that generally struggles versus projectiles and gets zoned out for 6 minutes, after that game some people might have a rage response just because of the frustration accumulated throughout the set. So for me, I've complained about a lot of characters and I never viewed it as like harmful because in the back of my head I always knew like, oh, I can still improve in this. Like, yeah, I'll just complain that, Ixnay is stupid, and then I'll like move on, and it'll help me feel better in the moment, and it won't really matter. But I think for one, this is like a pretty dishonest approach. Like, if I knew the matchup wasn't the issue, it was me, but I'm still like feeling the need to complain about the character, that is just hypocritical, or just dishonest in general, really. And then I also think very frequently when you do this, it's pretty easy to get into the habit of raging because like you can and you feel justified. And then that starts to affect things that like you would not normally rage in. So for example, I would fight characters that I didn't like the matchup, so like Ike, Mario, Donkey Kong, the usual. And so I would have a general game plan that I'd make after like really thinking about why I lost the last time, and it would be a pretty good game plan. And then what would happen was the opponent would, adapt. And so when I reached this point, instead of like trying to adapt to how they adapted, I would just get mad and be like, oh, this matchup's impossible, like this character's stupid. And there were a lot of reasons for it, but one of the big ones is that I got into the habit of raging, so it was way easier for me to do that than it was to do the thing I actually wanted to, which is try hard and win. So the last thing I want to address was brought up in the Pittsburgh Discord when we were talking about the idea of having a tier list PR. One of the people made a comment essentially saying like, is it really worth it to change the way we do our ranking systems just for the people who raid? The big thing I wanted to reply with is like, I think tier list PRs are not only better for like the people who rage, I also think it's better for the people who don't. And I think that's because they're more accurate. So, for example, last season in Pittsburgh, I was ranked 3rd, and the person who was ranked 4th was very close to me in results. And the PR committee, and I'm on that committee, we had a long argument about it, and eventually we decided to value my out-of-region wins over his in-region results. And I, agree with this, but at the same time, if it's so close, why are we making this distinction in the first place? And so kind of with that, it's also like very frequently when you get to the lower end of a PR, what will happen is you'll have like someone that's beaten, you know, number like 2, number 7, and number 8 on the PR. And then you'll have someone else that's beaten like number 3, number 5, and number 6. And it's like, oh, who's better? And it's like, you know, does that mean anything? Like, those distinctions are so minor. Do you really have to like actively make some weird value judgments about them, or can't we just accept that, yeah, they're about the same and this distinction is meaningless, and let's move on with our lives? And so kind of lastly, I think jumping from one tier to another would be a huge accomplishment, whereas very frequently people get caught up in like what spot they are and if they dropped like 1 or 2, but in reality they're in the same group and like they didn't really change that much. So I think in that way, like a tier list PR would, you know, show greater accomplishments and value that more. So yeah, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. For the future of this channel, what I have in mind is I'm going to do, my next video is going to be a kind of like set review where I played Gucci on Wi-Fi for a while and he recorded it, and then I'm going to use that footage to like talk about some fundamental things, some like matchup specific things, stuff like that. So hopefully people like that, and then I'll probably do a comment reply to that one too, if you know people want it, if there are comments to reply to. And then after that, I think I have a couple ideas. I think I want to do one about like another rage video, but focus more on like character hate. I was also thinking of doing something regarding like being a woman in the community, or like looking at how like different types of artwork can affect people psychologically, just given how much has happened with like sexual assaults, that victims coming out and expressing their story. So I think that might be like appropriate now, but I don't know, let me know what you guys want to see, because I'm pretty much down to do whatever. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to everyone that commented on the last video. This was really fun to do. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd love to do these comment replies in the future, so let me know like if you liked it, if there's anything that you think I could improve on, and yeah, thanks.